My answer is pretty easily, honestly. The thing that is exciting about cosplay in the first place is becoming a character that you love or bringing a character to life. You hear pretty often, and it's really true. If you really love Emma Frost and you really want to bring Emma Frost to life, then it's pretty easy to keep finding new characters to feel that way about. It applies for video games, anime, and all that stuff. You see a character, for example, I saw Kirishima in My Hero Academia, and I started to fall in love with him throughout the seasons. I didn't really pay attention to him at first, but as the show progressed, the more I was excited to sort of create what a gender bend version of Kirishima would be. If he was a female, what would he look like, and how would the changes to his costume be? And as the wheels started turning, I started to get more and more excited about building it, and then like needed to build it. It was like physically a need to build it.
Cosplay for me is a way for me to engage with my friends, right? It's a social time, it's a travel opportunity, and it's a way to just kind of shake it up and break the norm from my everyday life that I kind of have to live every day with, right? So cosplaying to me gives me an opportunity to step outside of the challenges that I have to deal with regularly in life. So to me, it's just something I really look forward to.
My most uncomfortable costume at the time was my Dr. Doomkitty costume, which was a fusion of Dr. Doom meets my alter ego of Ivy Doomkitty and mashing them up together. Now, that costume was insanely uncomfortable for many different reasons. One, I had never worked with a thermoplastic called Warble before. It was my first time working with the material. I didn't really know what I was doing. I hadn't made armor before, so I just made mistake after mistake, and now have learned from those mistakes to know what not to do. But that being said, a few things that were incredibly uncomfortable were my overestimation of the length of my bracer. So with Dr. Doomkitty, I kind of designed it to be certain elements to be very cat-like. So something about the bracer, I had it going out a little more to a point, and because of that, it cut directly into my arm, and it caused these horrible welts at the end of the day on both arms, where it would just hurt to move. It was really restrictive that way. It was really restrictive on the shins for the shin armor because the same thing. I didn't really estimate the bottom of that shin guard, so I was really stiff when walking, in addition to buying the most uncomfortable shoes, which I highly recommend you guys invest in a good pair of shoes when you cosplay. Learn from these mistakes. Do not do this. And if you can, get a pair of shoes that you can wear for multiple costumes, or just make boot covers for them. I would end up with these horrible welts at the bottoms of my feet from walking around because I didn't, invest in a good pair of shoes. They were rather painful. But since learning all of those different things, I've actually now modified my armor. I've gone back and done like version 2.0 of Dr. Doomkitty, where that armor is not murder on my arms. I do not have welts, and I'm very, very comfortable now. So it's actually kind of fun to look at something that you started with way back when and then come back, make improvements on that, because you're looking at it through a whole new set of eyes.
Don't ever take squishy couch foam and just spray paint it and then try to wear it. That makes the most uncomfortable cosplay. One of the things we did early on was a group effort. We were doing costumes for Gwar. Now, I didn't actually do the costumes for the group Gwar. We were just doing a group costume of our own version of the costumes for Halloween contests and going to Renaissance fairs and any other little excuse we could find to wear these costumes in public. So the first couple years that we were working on this, because of the amount of stuff to make a Guar costume. If you don't know what it is, it's kind of a cross between the Muppets and a sea urchin, and it's just giant foam caveman. It's like Citadel miniatures, but as a costume. Anyway, my costume was Ballsack is the name of the character. He's kind of a minotaur with a bear trap for a head, with giant spikes in his shoulders. All that stuff was carved out of couch foam, and then it was just spray painted. Couch foam on its own is no big deal, right? You sit on it all the time if you've got a couch, and you know it's kind of soft. Once you spray paint it, it gives it a hard crust on the outside. Now, if you take this spray painted hard crust, put it against your skin, and walk around for a couple of hours, that's sandpaper. And I would say that's the most uncomfortable costume that I've done.
I've had a few cosplays that were just not. Actually, Bleeze was a pretty uncomfortable cosplay just because of the way that I had to try to get the bodysuit to work. The wings weren't attached to me very well. I had tried a new method, so the wings were always falling back and slumping back, and so I always had to kind of in turn slump forward to keep them forward, which after 4 or 5 hours on the back doesn't so good, and the heels are like huge heels, so they weren't very comfortable at all. So pretty much anything with those giant heels.
The hardest cosplay that I've ever made was definitely my Inquisitor from Dragon Age Inquisition. This cosplay took, I want to say, over 200 hours and at least 2 months to build. There were some days where I was building it nonstop for 8 hours, and it was the first time I'd ever done anything with foam, warbler, leather, zippers, and also patterning, because I had never patterned anything before. I usually just use patterns, and then all of a sudden this was the first time that I started using actual patterns and had to make myself a duct tape dummy for it too. So that was interesting. But I learned a lot from it, and I definitely made mistakes along the way. One of the biggest mistakes I think I made was I was making the bracers for the armor, and accidentally I was trying to put like the foam together and leather on top of it to make it larger, but in fact it made it way too bulky for the rest of the cosplay and just looked really weird. So after 8 hours of putting one of those bracers together, I ended up having to scratch the entire thing and starting from the beginning. So I ended up actually using just smaller pieces of leather, which made it look a lot better. But either way, this cosplay was just a labor of love because I absolutely loved the Dragon Age series. And even though it was super hard to build, all of that hard work really paid off. I wore it at WonderCon in 2017 and actually ended up winning one of the judges awards for it and got to learn more stuff at a place called Costume College. So even though that cosplay was the hardest that I've ever made, and I still to this day is still making modifications to it, it still was definitely probably one of my favorite cosplays.
My hardest cosplay that I've done so far was probably the Blood Elf from World of Warcraft. I did a Blood Elf mage for BlizzCon 2 years ago, and what made it incredibly difficult was the cosplay was mostly made out of Warbler with a foam interior, Warbler on the outside, and I started the cosplay with approximately 2 weeks until BlizzCon, where it would debut, and that is the mistake that a lot of cosplayers seem to make, is thinking that they can do something with not a lot of time. And I was also flying early to California. I live in Florida, for a convention the week prior. I think it was E3 or something like that. So I only really had 1 week to make an entire armor set and staff from World of Warcraft, which is fairly complicated. And it was also before I found out that you could buy actual foam dowels in a triangle shape. So I was hand cutting all of my dowels like a mad person on the floor of my living room, patterning out my chest for a chest plate and patterning out my shins for shin guards and like panic ordering Amazon Prime boots and trying to get it all done. And I ended up with all of the Warbler pieces created and primed, but not painted. So I flew to California, had a good friend of mine, Hendo Art, take me to Home Depot so I could buy spray paint and gold paint for the accents, and ended up painting all of it. We had a Halloween party. BlizzCon is November 1st, or like early November usually. There was a Halloween party that we were supposed to go to, and I had brought my costume with me and was painting at the kitchen counter in the middle of the party trying to get it finished, and it ended up being finished, working out, looking awesome, had a great time, but the time constraints definitely made it the hardest costume that I've ever created.
There's so many different materials to work with in cosplay, and I've had many different favorites over the years. In the beginning, it was always spandex, all the things. Everything spandex, nothing cannot be spandex, because it was super forgiving, and you know, if you make mistakes, you can hide them very easily. And then it kind of transitioned from that to non-stretch fabrics, and my love for things kind of switched from that to working with armor. So, you know, a lot of warble, a lot of foam, and now currently my favorite material to work with, armor and textiles aside, is paint.
Well, if any of you have ever watched my show or DIY Prop Shop, you know that my favorite material to work with is foam, and it's just foam. My first experience with foam came from college. I actually took a puppetry class where I went with the teacher because I had the ability to help load gear. So we went to an upholstery shop, and I actually watched them load this 2 meter by 2 meter by 2 meter cube of foam onto a giant bandsaw. It was incredibly impressive to me. And then it motorized, went through a horizontal bandsaw. So the blade's running horizontally, and it just shaved like 3/4 or 5/8 of an inch off the top of the foam. And then the employees went up and pulled this giant piece of foam down, rolled it up. We loaded it up in the vehicle with a 5-gallon bucket of barge. Yeah. One of the few times I've worked with barge. And anyway, we then proceeded to make, you cut your own foam puppets and had to make skits and plays with puppets. And it was great fun. I made a dragon. It's goofy, cartoony, but hey, foam is my favorite material to work with. Contact cement, I've gone through gallons of the stuff, and absolutely. Why is it my favorite? Probably because of speed to work with. It's very fast to work with. It's very forgiving to work with. You can force it and flex it, so it's not like working with wood where you really have to be very exact with your angles in order for it to look right, or it's a ton of putty. It's very forgiving.
Shameful last minute fix that I've ever done was last year. I was at a nightclub for a cosplay competition. I think it was around Halloween, and I was dressed up in my Mara. And Mara is mainly just a bodysuit and a lot of foam armor. And what happened was, in order for me to get into it, I have to have somebody else help me. So they have to basically take the corset and slide it on to me because it snaps in the back. And so what happened was we were sliding it onto myself, and one of the foam pieces in the back totally just ripped and split right before the competition. So what I ended up doing is, well, actually the person who was dressing me, my handler, she decided to fix it with a paper clip. So we got a paper clip and then basically took the paper clip apart and put it on the back. So in order to keep it stayed for the competition, and luckily it was behind my hair so you couldn't see it. And so, yeah, it was really, we were in a bathroom trying to fix it the entire time. It was super ridiculous, but hey, it worked, and I ended up winning part of the competition, so whatever works, guys.
I usually go back to it was when I was first starting to cosplay. I was doing Tara from Teen Titans, and Tara is not the most well-known character. She was only in maybe 1 or 2 episodes in the Teen Titans animated series, and I didn't think that anyone was really gonna know who she was, but I was at a con in Tampa, Florida called MetroCon, and I was cosplaying as Tara, walking around, and she has yellow shorts and a black cut-off tank top like Kim Possible, and a T on her chest, and a little belt and gloves and goggles, and that's it. So it's really like not a super crazy cosplay. To me, it was like a comfy Sunday cosplay, and I was walking around, and I was about to go change, and I was walking through like the back of the convention, and a mom came and stopped me and asked me to take a picture with her daughter. And when I looked back, her daughter had a Tara keychain on her backpack, and she was too shy to say anything to me herself, but she like had a little Tara keychain and a little Tara figure, and I guess Tara was her favorite character, which is wild to me. I didn't think that she was that like notable or distinguishable despite being my favorite character. So I went over and took a picture with her and knelt down by her, and her mom took a couple pictures of us, and I just remember being super overwhelmed with how excited the child was. And I don't think I'm ever gonna forget that one interaction, because it was the first time that a kid really was super excited to see their favorite character sort of come to life in a convention experience.
So, favorite interaction I've had while in cosplay. Favorite interaction that I've had in cosplay, hands down, was when I was in Harley Quinn, Suicide Squad Harley Quinn. For me, real simple cosplay. I just started cosplaying. I bought all of the cosplay stuff off the line. I didn't make any. I made the mallet. And I was at a convention. I think it was like my second actual convention, so it was still really new for me. And I had this little girl come up to me, and she was dressed in a little Harley outfit, and she was adorable. And she wanted to take my picture, and then she wanted to do like 20 different poses. And it was so cute. And so we did all these different poses together, and we were having fun. And for like, they had a bunch of people taking pictures, their parents were taking pictures, which was amazing. But just getting to kind of engage with her, and just everything else kind of tuned out, and I got to really focus on that experience with her, and you could tell she was having a great time. And so I love kids, and that, especially when I'm in cosplay. That's probably one of my best cosplay experiences that I can think of.
What is my dream costume? Okay, I've got a few dream costumes that I've thought about over the years, and I've got one that's kind of like a major pinnacle costume, and I'm sorry to say, I'm not willing to say what it is on camera yet, because I've looked and I haven't seen a good one yet. So I'm saving that one. And that's potentially coming, but that's still like, a year plus out. So it's not something. What's my dream costume at this point that I want to make? Mechagodzilla. I want to make a 1974 Mechagodzilla suit that I can wear and stomp around in, because I'm a huge Godzilla fan. I grew up watching Godzilla in the 70s in the theaters with my mom. She's such a tolerant soul. Thank you, Mom, for going to the movies and watching those horrible movies with me. But I loved it. And I knew they were rubber suits when I was watching it. And I knew they were models. And I loved the art of all of that while I was watching it. And so Mechagodzilla has just always, that particular Mechagodzilla, the 1974-75 one, has always been my favorite Mechagodzilla. Once he the late 90s, 2000s hit, he started to become too much like an iMac. He's got just too bulbous, I like the steam locomotive look of the 74 one. And so that's my dream cosplay, and I'm gonna try and start that before the end of this year.
So I have a lot of different tips and tricks that you can use for packing and traveling with a costume, since that's literally all I do. I travel so much with my costumes. So first and foremost, you want to get a high quality hard case, carrying case. You want to make sure it's really durable, it's not going to buckle or give under pressure, that it's going to keep everything really secure inside and safe. So much so that I've actually traveled with sewing machines in the carrying case, and they've been fine. So a few things you want to use. You want to either use foam or bubble wrap, whatever you prefer, to really make sure that nothing's going to move in there. You don't want to leave too much space for anything to shift around, because then it's going to mess up the whole thing. And I find that I really like the cases that have a zipper section on the inside, so it seals off one section from the other side in a hard top, because I know that for sure whatever's in that zipper portion is going to stay put and not shift around. So I usually put my armor bits in that part, pat them out with foam and bubble wrap. If I have a lot of fabric that's part of the costume, I'll also use that. That way I'm not adding too much weight that is something that I can't utilize for the costume or for wherever I'm traveling. I do a lot of international travel too, and I stay for an extended period of time, so I really can't afford to use too many materials that are not going to be useful to me while I'm out there. Do take into account the size of wherever it is you're going to put it in, suitcase, tub, whatever, crate. That way it can fit in there. So, you know, if you're looking at all of this armor, you want to make sure that it can fit into itself and stack in such a way inside so you're maximizing your space usage in there, and that, you know, that it actually fits. You don't want to end up making something and then find out that it's not even going to fit in the suitcase because it's too big.
So do I have any tips on packing up stuff and traveling with cosplay? Yes, a couple of tips. One that's been shared with me that I actually haven't done in practice, and one that I have done. So the one that's been shared with me that I haven't done in practice, you're doing a cosplay that's got a number of weapons, especially something that may be kind of modern. Pack it up and ship it to the con that you're going to go to. Don't bring it with you. That's just a whole nother level of stress and potential serious problems, because if somebody pops open your luggage, your Pelican case, whatever it is you're packing stuff in, and they see whatever inside that they don't want to have go on a plane, you could arrive to your destination and have a big problem and have put all this effort into doing something and lose out on the con where you wanted to take it. So just pack it up and ship it ground to where you're going. Just make sure you've got yourself, you're not crunching to where you have to finish it last minute, that you've got time for it to go. What I have done that I've found out is a great thing is to make things come apart. I don't do that a lot on the show because I'm trying to get stuff done, but I have done it to a couple of pieces to where things will, long staves or like longer, like the rocket-propelled sledgehammer, will actually unscrew into components that are small enough to fit into an overhead compartment or into checked luggage. And so it becomes easier to travel with. And that is very important. And that requires planning from the very beginning. You can't get 2/3 of the way through what you're building and realize I can't put this in the back seat of my car and shut both doors. You know, you need to be planning beforehand how it's going to break down. And my current favorite method for making it break down is actually using the cheapest paint extension poles and a plastic roller from like a paint roller, because it's got a thread on the end of it. And if you're just using the cheap wood ones, you can cut it to whatever length you want. And then the wood you can kind of cram extra tight into the plastic thread of the plastic paint roller, and you can get a really good tight fit that works well while you're carrying whatever it is you're carrying around. But then you can undo it, and it doesn't require any special locking set screws or additional mechanisms. It's just crank, there it is. And all that you have to do from the beginning, because you got to know where that set is. So when you start putting the artwork on the outside of it, things will line up when it's in the right point. Because yeah, that sucks too. When in order to make it tight enough, all of a sudden your thing is off, and that's no rewarding.
What don't I love about cosplaying? What I love about cosplay is dressing up. I just love dressing up, and I always have. Ever since I was a little kid, my favorite thing to do was dress up and use my imagination. Being an only child, I didn't have other siblings to play with, so my imagination and spare fabric were my entertainment. After watching a movie or learning something new, I would want to emulate it right away. Oversized dresses and old costume jewelry were definitely my favorite. So, besides my long history with dressing up, I love cosplay because you can choose who or what you're going to be. It's the freedom in it. The freedom to be a hero one day and a villain the next. Whatever anyone chooses to be or identifies as can cosplay.
What I love the most about cosplay is the sense of community that it brings to people who might not have had that type of community in their life before. I think a lot of people growing up in the 80s, 90s eras, anime was not cool. Video games were very looked down upon. They were always seen as a waste of time. You would not be a cool kid if you liked nerdy stuff. Really, the only things that were cool to like were the main superheroes, like Superman, Spider-Man, Batman type of stuff. And I think a lot of people had trouble, at least I know I did, and I know a lot of other people who did, who share this same sort of feeling, that they had trouble connecting to people with similar interests or similar hobbies. When I was in high school, I went home and just played World of Warcraft for approximately 8 hours a day. And I wish that I had a tribe of people that I felt like were my own, where I belonged. And I think that that's what I've found with cosplay the most, is a lot of people who share my hobbies, my interests, and I feel really connected to finding where you belong. And I think that's what I love the most about cosplay.